collaborative growth is a term that I've seen you writing a lot about on LinkedIn lately. And
Yeah.
what does that mean, collaborative growth?
Um, I see a problem in the way most sales and marketing organizations operate. They operate with the mindset and the perspective that they know more than everybody
Mm,
else. Um, and and therefore, as a result, they just start spraying their value props, spraying what they do, talking about trying to teach you how to do things. And of course, there's an element of all of that, and we're gonna both rant about things today about that other people should be doing. But true expertise comes from continuous learning
yeah.
from your customers, from your prospects, from other people in your industry, et cetera. And so collaborative growth is a process that we teach that helps sales and marketing teams put structure to this process of learning and sharing what they learn as they go in a way that kind of builds a community around them, because they are demonstrating that they're constantly trying to learn, trying to be a resource beyond just what they do and
Mm.
what they sell.
That idea of building or facilitating a community is something that I've talked about before on this podcast. And it's timely because if you think about a community financial brand, a community bank, a credit union, the idea of community has evolved beyond borders and zip codes and boundaries, cities, etc. So this idea of collaborative growth plays nicely into that perspective. Even in banking on digital growth, I wrote about how marketing and sales teams can unite to create the quote unquote the growth team.
Yeah.
I'm why collaborative growth? Why now? What makes this the time to be thinking about this as a strategic objective?
Well, I think businesses in general are facing a lot of headwinds for a variety of reasons. One, relevant to banking, interest rates are sky high, right? There's no longer free money. We all can't just take money and use it to grow our business and then pay it back or pay it back at the same amount, right? So we all have to worry about interest rates now. And of course, inflation has increased costs of things. The labor market's wacky, to say the least. So there's the economic things. There's geopolitical issues. I think there's a lot of unrest around the world, which disrupts markets. So I think all your banking people are well aware of that stuff. I don't have to preach on that. But then there's also an interesting dynamic with digital marketing. I think for digital marketing, for the first, say, 20 years or so, it was pretty wide open. I remember writing blog posts in the early 2000s and like then Googling the term I optimized for the next day and I'd be number one. Right. It's like, and I could do that at will. It was crazy back then. And of course it's gotten more competitive over time, but I think we've reached a point where unless you have a lot of money or a lot of time, it's hard to break through in your marketing. I'm not just talking about ranking on Google with search engine optimization. I'm also talking about building a following on a social site, building a newsletter or an email list. Like all of those things have just gotten harder and harder because all of those channels are more and more crowded. I don't know about you, but when I wake up in the morning, I got 100 emails in my inbox. I got 30 emails in my LinkedIn directs. I got 10 to 15 Slacks from my internal team. And it's just completely overwhelming. Every channel is like that. And so as a result of that increased competition, I think spitting or spraying out your value prop and publishing content and promoting it, like most people are just tuning that out, or a lot of people are tuning that out. And what prospects and people in general are really thirsting for is actual, true, personal, one-to-one interaction. And if you're going to do that, you can't just talk about what you do. You can't just talk about how awesome you are. You can't just talk about the problems you solve in an abstract way. You actually need to talk to your prospects and customers. You need to tell their stories. You need to gather insights from, say, 50 companies or people that are similar and share some of those insights in anonymous and aggregate way. You need to have a podcast, right, where you're interviewing other people to learn from them and to share their message out in the world. And you need to really give before you're going to get.
Well,
Uh, yeah.
that giving before you get, that's something that Joe Polish has talked about. Life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. And when you think about this idea of how marketing, even digital marketing, has transformed over the last 20 years, you're right. I remember the same thing back in the day. You wrote a blog post, you could rank super easily, and now it's crowded, it's competitive, it's commoditized even. And I think it's going to be even more so as we move further into this age of AI, because you can go in and create quote unquote commoditized content, but that's not, there's this human connection, there's this human factor. In banking on digital growth, I wrote about, how the majority of financial brands compete on the same great rates, amazing service, look-alike product features,
Right.
but that's narcissistic marketing. The potential though is to help first, to sell second, to play the role of the helpful and empathetic guide.
Right.
That's where this idea of, and this is going to be the subject of my third book, banking on expertise, comes back into play, because it's the expertise that is now the differentiator, particularly with the niche market segments. Niche banking
Yep.
is something that we've talked about here. Before we get too deep into opportunities, I want to roll back on what could be a potential roadblock or an impediment that could slow down or derail the thinking around collaborative growth, because there are a tremendous amount of opportunities, but I'm always trying to get people to see the obstacles first so that they can be aware of them before they actually run into them head first.
Yeah. Yeah. As I told you before, I'm excited about your book, Banking on Expertise, because I think it's very well aligned with my thinking on this. And to answer your question about what holds people back from embracing collaborative growth, it's the fact that they think of sales and marketing as this assembly line. We like over the last 20 years, this is what every expert has actually said is like, okay, you have your salespeople. Let's put a sales development rep in front of them who's booking calls for them, right? This happens more in SaaS, I think, than maybe in banking, but there's a lot of businesses, even beyond software companies, that put somebody there. Their job is just to go out and email people and call people and book a call for the actual expert, who's maybe an expert, the salesperson, to close, right? And then what we do is we put paid ads in front of that person, and we're putting them through a landing page, right, to get the lead so that we can call them. And then we're doing social on top of that, and we hire a social media person to sit there and publish links to our content and memes and shit like that might go viral, right? And so there's just this assembly line that we built. It reeks of impersonalization.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow your buyers to connect with a human who might have expertise, right? What it does is it treats them like a transaction and puts them through an assembly line. Nobody wants to go through that. So we need to stop treating our businesses like they're buffets that we, put people through. They walk through and pick what they want, or they go through, a car wash and get different steps. We need to start thinking about it as a gourmet restaurant where we're actually have a waiter that knows what they're talking about and a chef in the back that has a few stars.
Well, you're talking my language when you're talking starred restaurants and experiences. As I shared before we hit record, we actually, my wife and I, we just went to New Orleans and we ate some really good food down there.
Yes.
But your thinking is sound. When you look at, people are looking for expertise from a human. I wanted to pause on that because in banking on digital growth, I wrote about DX plus HX equals growth, meaning a positive digital experience when combined with a positive human experience is a path towards growth. It's not one or the other. In fact, I was talking with someone the other day about Gen Z, and I said, well, what about Gen Z? Is it 100% digital? They said no. They said 80% digital, 20% human at the beginning of a financial buying journey. But once that account, that loan has been funded, then it begins to flip. Now it's 80% human, 20% digital for all of the transactional stuff, but they still value the human expertise, the human perspective. Why? And I guess because there's such a loud discussion in the vertical right now within financial services about AI. And I'm like, well, don't over index on that and forget the people. And I think that's what has happened through digital transformation in the vertical. We've forgotten that behind every data point is DNA. Why the human factor whenever we're thinking AI? What's the difference here?
So I am all for data and automation and analytics. As you know, our software company provides and is an analytics product. We have a team of data scientists building AI models. So totally on board with automating and using AI to make your automation even smarter, right? And serve customers in a more personalized way. However, the more that we do that, right, the less flexibility usually is in our system.
Mm.
I have a financial advisor, um, and he knows when I want to retire, and he knows what my income is, and he just walked me through like 5 different options the other day, and he allowed me to ask questions out of order, right? But he also came in with that as an agenda and say, here's the things I recommend you do based on your personal interests and goals. Someday maybe that'll be more automated, but those are pretty big decisions about my son's education, my wife's and I's retirement, our ability to help family when needed. Like all of these things factor into it, and so I just don't think I would personally trust a robot to that, right?
Well, you bring up a great point. These are big decisions, and I think there's a strong correlation between SaaS and financial services, and here's why. Sometimes these are complex buying journeys on the SaaS. There's multiple people that have to buy internally, but while financial services, you might not have multiple buyers unless you're dealing in an SMB space, but on the retail side, on the consumer side, it's a very complex journey. Money is already inherently complex. Money has a high cognitive load, if you will.
Yep. Yep.
And so I just wanted to make that connection between the buying cycles here and when humanity can be interjected as an Obi-Wan Kenobi or a Mr. Miyagi to the Danielson or to the Luke Skywalker.
Right. Right. Yeah. No. I think in general, at any point that a human needs it, they should have a human that they can talk to that has trust and credibility and expertise. Right.
It's interesting that you say. I want to hop in though on that for context here for those watching and listening. Whenever someone, can you repeat that actually to set this back up? Because what you said, I think it's such a key point to pause on.
Yeah, I think so. No matter where somebody is in the buying process or in the already bought process, right, of their customer, I think there should be the option at any point for them to say, I want to talk and work with a human. So technology might be enabling that service. It should be.
Right. But here's
the
context. If you're watching and listening, think about your bank or credit union website, even your fintech website. Mm-hmm. The primary call to action is to apply or open an account. How easy is it though for someone to say, I need to talk to someone? Where do they have to go typically?
You got to go usually 3 or 4 clicks deep.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the things that we've done within our own methodology is right below the primary call to action, we put what's called a secondary CTA, which is request a callback.
Yep.
And around 30% of people to 40% of people that request a callback and go through that funnel, if you will, they end up actually going on to convert. So it's capturing kind of that consideration stage that for the majority of financial brands, when we diagnose and assess them, they don't have that button or that transitional call to action to connect with the human being.
Right. Yeah, I'll give you a good example. I don't like to share my banking information, but I used to use Silicon Valley Bank. And then I'm sure you know this here, but then one day I saw in the news that they were shutting down.
Right.
And therefore it didn't have access to any of our capital. So I learned the lesson to spread our company's working capital out across banks. And so I was in a mad dash scramble with the co-founder to figure out like what bank should we try to move money to if we can even move money, right? And we ended up settling on a digital first bank and a very traditional large bank and keeping the money. But that traditional, that digital first bank is where most of our business went, because I could open that account quickly and I could get a hold of someone very quickly to solve the immediate question I had. It literally took like 2 months to get to the point where I could even deposit money into the other bank. Now that second bank's not going anywhere, and so I'm keeping money there, and they have part of our business. But I think that illustrates the point that when somebody needs something, you need to be available to them. Make it as digital as you can, because that will get them in and help them serve themselves as much as possible. But you got to be available. You got to answer the difficult questions. And that bank did an amazing job at that, and they earned their business.
That's a fantastic real life example, particularly on the SMB side of things, of how important humanity comes back into play within this conversation.